A food chain is not that much of a junior class concept. It is one of the difficult concepts that we experience while teaching the ecology or the ecosystem. See, the overall thing about the ecosystem is that the energy would get transported to the next level, and we say that suppose we have a grass, and then we have a caterpillar that is eating the grass, then after caterpillar, the it would be eaten um, by a hornet. It maybe would eaten by a wasp. It would be eaten by a wasp, and then wasp would get eaten by a sparrow, and a sparrow would be eaten by maybe a kite, a black kite. So this is a five-stepped food chain, a five-stepped food chain. Now, we see that the energy is getting transported from one level to the next level. It is getting transported. This is something to know that when the energy gets okay, first let's make the trophic levels. This is trophic level 1, trophic level 2, trophic level 3, trophic level 4, trophic level 5. This is to be noted that whenever the energy is transferred, whenever the energy is transferred from one trophic level to next, what was the trophic level? Energy level. Trophic level to next, the energy would be lost. Energy would be lost. Energy would be lost. So this is the overall situation, or this is the overall concept of the energy transfer. Now, why do we say that the energy is lost whenever it gets transferred? First of all, always remember that we have laws of thermodynamics, and those laws of thermodynamics always say that the energy first, energy can neither be created nor it can be destroyed. There is a universal rule. Like you cannot make the energy neither be created nor it can be destroyed. This is one rule. The second rule of thermodynamics, the second rule of energy is that with each transfer or with each conversion of energy, it would be lost to the environment, lost to the environment. Now, what does it mean? You must know that in a food chain, when the sunlight reaches the grass, when the sunlight reaches the producers, when the sunlight reaches the producers, then then only 1% of the sunlight is used by the producers. Only 1%. The rest of the energy is lost to the environment. Maybe maybe it is reflected by the plants, maybe it falls on uh, falls on the ground other than plants, other than green or other than plants. Much of the light is reflected. Much amount of energy falls to the water bodies, falls in the water. So overall, we say that the energy that is falling on the plant from the sun, it basically is destroying. It is basically not used. It is not used. It is not used. Instead, it would be reflected or it would be lost. But you must remember that when the caterpillar comes and eat the grass, the energy is lost even more. Let me tell you how. Suppose that the grass has got the energy. Always remember that always remember that the grass or the producer level, the grass or the producer level, they have highest grass or the producer level, they have highest energy. They have highest energy. What does it mean? What does it mean? That is the highest amount of energy an organism can have is present in the at the producer level. It is present at the producer level, or you can say that because they produce the energy, since they produce the energy, they would have the highest level. Now, the consumers, the primary consumers would come and eat the grass. The primary consumers. When the primary consumers come and eat the grass, remember that they would not eat the plant completely. They would not eat the whole plant. They would leave some parts. Some energy is stored in branches. Some energy is stored in branches. Similarly, some energy is has been used up by the plant, has been used up for reproduction by the plant. Now, there are 3 points. The whole plant is not getting eaten. Second, some energy is stored in branches and stem which are not edible by most of the primary consumers. Then a big amount of energy has been used by the plant by itself for respiration, for cell division, for reproduction, for fruit development, anything. And you can say that first point, second point, third point, and fourth point is maybe some is used in pollination. So there are many kinds of ways in which the plant has already used its energy. So it means what the science says, science of energy transfer in ecology says, the science of energy transfer in ecology basically says that if the plants are having 1000 units of energy, then the primary consumer would now have only 100 units of energy. You can simply say that the energy has been lost meanwhile. The energy has been lost meanwhile, meaning that it has been lost while it got transferred, but it is not necessary that it is lost during the transfer. It is basically the fact that much of the energy is not even used by the plant. I'm sorry, not even eaten by the primary consumer. It is not even eaten by the primary consumer. The primary consumer just left it. So that is why a primary consumer only have 100 units of energy. Now the next one, when we talk about the secondary consumer, now much of the energy a primary consumer would have in its like it would already use up its energy in respiration. Some of the some of the eaten parts, some of the eaten parts are lost. Some of the eaten part are lost in feces. Some of the eaten parts are lost in feces. Some energy is lost urine, in urine, and even the suppose that if the primary consumer is a deer, then its and hooves and horns. or antlers would also be using the energy, but now they are not edible. So much of the energy is now no more accessible to the secondary consumer. The secondary consumer cannot access the energy from the primary consumer, all the energy that I have written over here. Similarly, much of the energy may be lost to sweating, may be lost to sweating. So all this is basically the way of energy lost, and the secondary consumer cannot access it. It means now the secondary consumer would only have 10 units of energy. If in an environment you have a tertiary consumer, tertiary consumer would be eating the secondary consumer. Suppose that the secondary hold on, the primary consumer, suppose the primary consumer is grasshopper, maybe grasshopper. Now grasshopper also have some parts which are not edible. Its exoskeleton, some of other parts. Then the secondary consumer maybe is let's say sparrow. Now the sparrow has a beak. It has its hind limbs or legs, its claws, its like internal parts. Some of the internal parts, they are not edible, so they would be lost. Let's say the tertiary consumer is a hawk. Now, given giving all the conditions, the tertiary consumer is now going to get only 1 unit of energy. Only 1 unit of energy. So the energy, the plants or the producers who are getting the energy directly from the source would have the highest amount of energy in them. They would have the highest amount of energy in them. But when it comes to the later organisms, with each jump, with each transfer of energy, much of the energy would be lost, not only by the respiration, but in many other processes. That organism is growing, that organism is developing. So every role that organism is performing would require energy in its body structure: horns, antlers, hooves, and maybe the much of the intestine, feces, urine. Much of the energy is lost into these particular parts, and the total. And obviously there is another problem. Most of the time the whole organism is not eaten, especially when it comes to large predators and preys. A whole deer is mostly not eaten. Let's say if you talk about the sparrow, it has a skeleton. It has a skeleton. Now the whole sparrow may be eaten, but skeleton has a lot of energy, but is not getting digested into the hawk. So that is why much of the energy is lost during the transfer, lost to the environment. Is that understood?
Yes.
Okay. Now moving on, um, this is one of the way of representing the energy transfer. There is another way of representing the energy transfer, and that is by the food web. Now there are limitations of food chains. If you notice, in a food chain you cannot represent the sources of energy. You cannot represent the sources of energy in a food chain, or you can say all sources of energy. It is true that one organism does not have more does not have only one source of food. It mostly have many sources of food. So that is why it is like quite obvious that these plants or these organisms, they are basically not properly represented by a food chain. Similarly, um, the food chain is not properly, it does not properly represent trophic levels. Properly does not represent trophic levels. Trophic levels. So, and the organisms present there, and the organisms present there. So it simply means that the food chain is not a good way of representation. Okay, so let's move on. Now we are now we are going to talk about a food web. It is not that much of a difficult thing. It basically is a way of showing a network of food chains. Many food chains are there. And rather than drawing a, a food web, it would be more enjoyable if we observe and understand to see how we often build a food web. Okay, this is the ecosystem living together. Food webs. Okay, this is a food chain, and yeah. Okay, now this kind of freshwater food chain, seashore food chain. Yes, this is a food web. Now you see this kind of food in this kind of food web, you can see many things that are basically performing the photosynthesis. This is a an underwater food web, a food web present underwater. Then there these all these are transferring the energy, and in this you can extract the food chains. This is very important to know that when we try extracting the food chains. Okay, food webs to describe the impacts. Okay, uh, profit level. um, there is something about the food webs, ecological pyramids. All right, no, it is not requirement of your syllabus, so we do not have to do this in detail. We just need to have a look at the food web, and we need to make sure that we are basically looking at the network of food chains. Now, how you can just let's say how you can identify that it's a food web. It would have a lot of food chain, and you can take many food chains out of it. You can take many food chains out of it. Suppose looking at this particular food web, you can take out one food chain, second food chain, third food chain, then this is fourth food chain, this is fifth food chain. Many food chains can be taken out from a food web. So it is a network of food chains, but there is also another problem. There is also another problem in a food chain. In a food chain, okay, we will come back to the food web when we are relating it to human impact, human impacts. We will rediscuss the food web because human impacts basically target the food webs. Since you can see clearly over here that a single organism is having many many kinds of a single organism is having many kinds of food, many types of food. A single organism is having many types of food. So if you disturb a food web, you disturb the source. Suppose, let me give you an idea. Let's say the eagle has three trays over here. Just hold on a sec. Hold on a sec. Now, when we'll come back to the food web, I'll let me give you a small idea. When we come back to the food web, we'll see that an eagle has many targets: hare, rat, mongoose. Suppose that we apply the snake has three diets: beetle and rat. Suppose we apply a pesticide to the environment that is damaging the rats. The rats, since you are damaging the rats, then the snake would have only one food source. If the beetle are killed or they migrate or they start getting short in an environment, the snake would starve. If the snake would starve, the eagle would have only two targets left: mongoose and hare. And mongoose is also eating the hare. So it means eagle and mongoose are competing for hare. Then it means that the hare would be quickly quickly vanished. And since the hare would be vanished, it means the mongoose and eagle would have one source removed. The eagle had three sources. One we killed, one is now starving, so it is also not here. It is quickly vanished because mongoose and the eagle both targeting it. Now eagle has only one prey and mongoose is gonna starve. And soon the eagle would starve as well. So what did we do? We only killed the rat here. So that basically is the human impact. So we'll be discussing it later. The thing about the food web is that it also has limitations. It also has limitations, and those limitations are very clear. And what is that? You represent cannot represent the number of organisms number of organisms at each level, at each trophic level, like producers, primary consumer, secondary consumer. You know that these organisms, like we have been studying the primary consumer and secondary consumer since yesterday. We have been studying, but we cannot represent that the primary consumer and secondary consumer are um, present in this number. There are 100 primary consumers. There are 2,000 plants. There are 50 eagles. We did not represent the number of organisms, and we also did not represent the total types of organisms. Total types of organisms. Like obviously, if we are saying that in an environment, if we are saying that in an environment in an environment we have, let's say, tertiary consumers. So we only give one example of tertiary consumers, but it does not mean that there would be only one example. No, there would not be only one example of tertiary consumers. There would be more examples of them, but we did not represent it. So food web is very limited way of representing the organisms in the in energy relationships in an ecosystem. Then there is another problem with food webs and food chains. We cannot represent the energy level. We cannot represent the energy level. Like, what is the energy at each level? Which one is having the highest amount of energy? No doubt, we integrated the energy concept into the food chain. But remember, that was only my way of explaining it. In reality, you cannot represent a food chain. In reality, you cannot represent the energy in the food chain or food web. So that is why we have many limitations in food chain and food web, so that we cannot represent them. We cannot represent, they cannot represent an environment. They cannot represent the quick intensity, sorry, they cannot represent the true intensity of some things. They cannot represent it. So that, for that purpose, what do we need to do? We need to go to the biological pyramids. Before that, I would like you put you in a condition that is a content of syllabus, but I haven't explained yet. I would like to put you in a condition, and that is why there are no long food chains. Can you answer this?
Um, okay, so basically, because I think the efficiency of energy transfer will just become very low eventually.
Can you repeat it? Sorry, your voice got lagged.
The efficiency of energy transfer will become very low eventually.
Yes, the energy would not be enough to support the organism. The energy would no longer be enough to support the viability of organisms. So it means that due to energy, you know that why there are so many plants but so much less large organisms, especially especially those organisms which come at secondary or tertiary consumer level. They are always less in number. Like, you see, in a region you will find more elephants than lions, even though the elephant is 5 times larger mostly than a lion, weighing almost 3 times more. But why there are more elephants than lions? It is a very obvious answer, that the lions, although they are very efficient, very quick, they are smaller, but they are getting way less energy compared to the compared to the um, elephants. So it means that the elephants are basically getting the energy directly from source. That is why they are in much larger number compared to the lions. Coming to the insects are in huge numbers. Why? Because they need very less amount of energy. They have very less needs. So when they get the energy directly from the source, it means they are having a lot of energy, a lot more energy than they actually require. That is why their population is so high. So that is why there are no long food chains. Humans would have the highest energy when the human would be eating the directly from the source of energy, means carbs. Now many students who do the gym or they try to do the bodybuilding, many students immediately ask me that, sir, don't we have more power when we have protein? Remember, a body that is lacking the carbohydrates and fats only to show off the cuts be made of proteins is one of the weakest body that you can consider. That body is only for show off. That body is
because
only for show.
protein isn't energy. I mean, it is like
Protein
a bit of energy, but it's not as much as fat or carbohydrate.
protein is not primary source of energy.
Yeah.
Primary source of energy is carbohydrate. You may have heard that when the athletes when these athletes that like in the bodybuilding show, when the athletes are supposed to be appearing in front of the jury, they eat burgers at that time. They eat many kinds of sugars at that time. Why? Because while flexing there is a high chance that they would get a cramp.
Mm.
Reason? Less energy.
But
So remember,
I've also heard that like when your heart rate is you're doing an exercise that requires very low heart rate, so then your body burns fat instead of carbohydrates.
see, the thing is, the body does burn fats, but the problem is that the body requires the fats as well. And the body, if you want the body to be properly fueled, the heart should be properly fueled and the brain should be properly fueled. They should be properly fueled. It means must be provided with the carbohydrates. No doubt the energy is required, energy is provided by the fats, but the fats are not easily broken. If you need sudden energy, your body would never get immediate energy because the fats cannot be easily broken. They are not easily broken. That is why it is never recommended to use the fat as the source of your immediate energy. Got it?
Yes.
So, when the humans are supposed to have a good amount of energy, they should become a secondary consumer. They should become sorry, no, a primary consumer, consuming directly from the sources, meaning plants. So now coming to the next part, biological pyramids. These actually pyramid-shaped diagrams, pyramid-shaped pictures. The widest parts show the extent or intensity of something, or no, not the widest parts, the length of bars, the length of bars show the extent or intensity of the um, of something. Okay, now let's see what does it mean. We basically are going to draw a pyramid, and this pyramid is going to be represented by the horizontal bars. The horizontal bars the length of the horizontal bars would be representing some different it would be representing different types of you can say the number of organisms or the amount of energy, some things like that. So we are going to draw the pyramids. Now, what do we represent in pyramids? What do we represent in pyramids? The things that we represent in pyramids Number one is a biomass. Biomass. Biomass means total amount of mass at a particular trophic level. Trophic level. It is also said that it is also considered by the scientists that this pyramid also represents the total amount of energy, the total amount of energy. But the total amount of energy, but mass also means the total number of organisms, total amount of mass at a particular trophic level, or you can also consider total number, total amount of organisms belonging to that, belonging to that trophic level, belonging to that trophic level. Let's say we create a pyramid. We create a pyramid. Now, if I ask you to create a pyramid and starting from producers, but you have to see how much energy or mass present at the producer level. So we are 100% sure that at producer level we would have the highest level or highest amount of energy. Then the mass, since the mass is created by the energy, the next level T1, the next trophic level would have lesser energy than the first. Then the sequence proceeds. So this pyramid basically represents the total amount of mass made at a particular level, total amount of energy, or in other words, you can say the total number of organisms at a particular level is also represented by the biomass. Hold on. Okay. So it means, did you understand it?
Yes.
Now, with each advancing trophic levels, we need to know that the energy is getting less, or the mass of the organisms is getting less. The amount of organisms is getting less. So this is called as pyramid of biomass. This one is called as pyramid of biomass. Then, with the help of another type of pyramid, we make we make pyramid of numbers. This pyramid, this pyramid represents the number of the number of organisms at a trophic level. Now, this would confuse you a bit. What is the difference between biomass and pyramid of and this pyramid? See, I would just remove this definition. In pyramid of number and in pyramid of biomass, there is a very straightforward difference. The pyramid of biomass says total mass of organisms, meaning that every organism would be included at producer level that has capability to be a producer. But in this pyramid, we actually talk about specific organism. We actually talk about specific organism, meaning that we name them. We name them. It is more like this kind of pyramid that we are going to make. This basically represents a food chain. How many organisms we represent in a food chain?
Um,
Per trophic level.
isn't it like subjective, or there is a specific number?
No, 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 no. Per trophic level, how many do we represent in the food chain? Like T1, T2, T3.
So doesn't it depend on the amount of food and energy at the previous level?
Okay, let me give you an idea. When we drew the food chain, we were drawing one organism at one trophic level. Food chain, like the grasshopper, sparrow, then hawk, etc., etc. So food chain. In a food chain, we represent only one organism per trophic level. Did you get what I wanted to say?
Yes, kind of.
Hold on, let me tell you. See, in a food web, what we were doing at each producer level or primary consumer level or secondary consumer level, we were we were representing multiple organisms, didn't we?
Yes.
We were representing multiple organisms. So same kind of setup when we represent in the form of pyramid, we make the pyramid of biomass. Multiple organisms per trophic level. But when it comes to pyramid, the next pyramid, we consider the food chain. Now, in the food chain, we represent only one organism: grasshopper, and all the upcoming trophic levels. So, in this kind of pyramid, we specify the organism just like we specify them in a food chain. In a food chain, we represent only one organism. So let's suppose I draw a food chain and I want to show the total number of organisms at that food chain. Total number of organisms at that food chain. Suppose I have drawn a pyramid. This would be represented by the grass. Why? Because the grass has many individuals at the producer level. At the producer level. Then primary consumer. Primary consumer maybe is a grasshopper. Grasshopper. That is a primary consumer which has less number than the producer. Then the tertiary consumer may be a sparrow and then a hawk. So when we specify the organisms by name and we talk about a particular organism, that would be this kind of pyramid would be called as pyramid of number. It would be called as pyramid of number. This would be called as pyramid of number. So we can simply see that in this one, we are only considering all organisms at a particular trophic level. But at this one, we are naming them and we are specifying them. Okay, now what is the difference? Why do we make two different pyramids? Because these pyramids have alternate shapes. This pyramid has alternate shapes. Suppose, suppose we say three insects eaten by insects, which are eaten by the wasps, eaten by the sparrows, or let's say a bird A bird, and a bird is okay. I'll just write the sparrow over here, and the sparrow gets malaria by a particular organism called as Plasmodium. Now, trees, the insects have a high rate, high reproductive rate compared to trees. Now, the trees would occupy much, this much, you can say, length of the bar, but the insects would now be occupying this much bar. Why? We are specifying them. We are not considering anything other than trees. You notice, if we would have said producers, it means we are considering all the producers. It would be impossible. It would be impossible to say that that all the producers are less than insects. Impossible. If we would have considered all the producers, now we are specifying the trees. When we specify the trees, just like the food chain, like I now these trees have less number. One more thing. If I would have drawn the same thing, if I would have drawn the same thing in a pyramid of biomass, you know how it would look like? It would look exactly like this, in which the trees would be occupying the lowest level. You know why? Because the trees have highest biomass. Biomass means the total mass of the life, and total mass also means the total energy. So trees would have highest energy, highest mass. But since we are counting specific organisms, it means that we are going to literally count them and the trees would be less in number compared to insects. Then come the wasps. The wasps are eating these insects, so they are less than insects. Then come the sparrows, which are eating the wasps. But you know what? You know what? That the parasite, the parasite that is uh, making the sparrow sick, the parasite that is making the sparrow sick or that is causing the malaria in sparrow, that parasite is that parasite is obviously higher in number, even more than insects. It would be occupying more area, larger area than insects. This is what I'm trying to say. The pyramid of number would definitely have exceptions because you are literally counting them. You are not measuring their amount of energy. You are not measuring their total mass made by them. No, you are not measuring mass. You are typically counting them. So when you count them, they are there are exceptions. The trees can be less than the insects. Is that understood?
Yes.
This is a way of representing, like this is the pyramid of numbers. This is the pyramid of numbers. Then this is the pyramid of biomass. They are not showing the exception in this book, but in the other book, they are showing the exceptions. Just look at this one. Box tree, caterpillar, wasp, bee eater, flea. Flea basically would be eating the bee eater's flesh when it would be killed, when it would be dead. So that basically is the idea of pyramids. We can properly represent the organisms in a particular at a particular trophic level with the help of these pyramids. Okay, clear?
Yes, clear.
Pyramids of and number, pyramid of biomass, pyramids of energy. Pyramids of energy is same as the pyramid of biomass. It is same as the pyramid of biomass always, because we know very clearly that pyramids of biomass can never be, sorry, pyramid of energy can never be like different. Biomass is equal to energy. This is the way, this is the same way I was telling you. 20% reflected from the plant, 40% of the energy uses to warm up soil, air, and vegetation. Only 1% is used in formation of biomass. 39% evaporates from water from the plant, so only 1% is typically used. The energy transfer, okay. So that is the whole thing about the essentials of the ecosystem. Advantages of using pyramids, I have already told you. Okay, using pyramid of energy rather than pyramid of numbers and pyramid of biomass. This is very typical. Pyramid of energy actually can represent both of them simultaneously. Pyramid of biomass and pyramid of energy. Sorry, pyramid of biomass and pyramid of numbers. We can represent it through the pyramid of energy. So we do have an advantage using the pyramid of energy. It can include both of them. Like pyramid of energy can include pyramid of biomass and pyramid of numbers. Okay, trophic level, food webs, ecological, secondary consumer, quaternary consumption, why in terms of network, why food chains usually have fewer than five trophic levels, why is it more? Humans to eat crop plants, I have already told you that. Alright, moving on to the next part of the chapter, that is the nutrient cycles. Okay, what do you know about the, okay, before that, before the nutrient cycles, let's complete the total topics from the books. Hold on.